emulators were used in the production of this podcast.
That's awesome, sweetie. Thank you.
Welcome to the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast. It's the show where we talk about Atari's last home video game console and its library one game at a time. If you like or hate the Jaguar or just want to learn more about it, I'm glad you're here. I am Shinto, and I have apparently evolved just enough to host a podcast episode about part number J9006, Evolution Dino Dudes. Evolution Dino Dudes is a 2MB cartridge, a puzzle game for one player, developed by Imagitech Design and released by Atari in 1993. You might know the game by a prior name, Dino Olympics, which shipped for the Atari Lynx about 6 months prior. Or you might know it as Dino Quest, which was the working title for Dino Olympics when shown off at the 1992 Winter Consumer Electronics Show. Or you might know the game as The Humans, as it was released by GameTech on other platforms like the Amiga, the PC, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Genesis, CD32, and 3DO. It was planned for the Game Gear as well, but never released. Some of these other ports were under the Mirage label, as if all this wasn't confusing enough. The Humans went on to have 3 sequels, most recently The Humans Meet the Ancestors, which was released in 2009 for the Nintendo DS as well as Windows. When The Humans was first previewed in magazines, software company Psygnosis, distributor of the game Lemmings, was about to cry havoc and let slip the lawyers, but Humans ended up being sufficiently different from Lemmings that the lawyers were held back, presumably with green-haired foot-tapping blockers. I liked Lemmings, played it under MS-DOS back in the early 90s. I still have the original floppy disk too. There it is right there. But while The Humans and by extension Dino Dudes can be superficially similar, playing both, they are rather different experiences. Why did Atari rename The Humans? According to the December 1995 issue of ST Format magazine, Atari liked the game The Humans and commissioned Imagitech to port the game to the Falcon and Jaguar, but thought that the title wasn't catchy enough. The Falcon version was released well after the Jaguar version toward the end of 1995. This was one of the games left in the ether after Atari pulled out of the home computer market, so UK company 1632 Systems released Dino Dudes along with Steel Talons, which had an earlier release for the Lynx, and Jeff Minter's Llama Zap, which did not. While still on the topic of the Falcon, the Jaguar gamepads and color-shifted Falcon power pads were compatible with the Falcon port of Evolution Dino Dudes. I have 3 different sources that indicate Atari came up with the original concept for The Humans and then handed it off to Imagitech for development, and a couple more sources that lean toward the game originating exclusively with Imagitech Design, so I'm not sure which one is correct. It's certainly possible that Atari was the ultimate source for this game, and I'll leave it at that. With regards to Imagitech Design itself, you can learn more about the company in episode 5 of this podcast, the Write-In episode, and this certainly won't be the last time I refer to episode 5 for Imagitech's history, so I hope I got it right. The Jaguar port was programmed by Andrew Seed. Seed also worked on later Jaguar games, including iWar and Bubsy and Fractured Furry Tales. If you're listening to this podcast in the future and working your way through the back catalog, you'll find those games covered in episodes 26 and 11, respectively. Otherwise, you'll have to wait several months for me to get that far. Sorry, I'll be waiting with you if that helps. Mr. Seed was fairly active on Usenet in the late 90s and early 2000. rec.games.video.atari, or RGVA as it tended to be called back then, as well as alt.AtariJaguar.discussion, which, I hadn't heard of that one before researching this episode. I was a world-class lurker on RGVA in the mid to late 90s, but if this alt.AtariJaguar.discussion existed on Usenet in those days, I didn't know about it. Anyway, a couple of these Usenet posts by Andrew Seed refer to Dino Dudes, and there are others that contain unrelated Jaguar tidbits that I still find interesting and would like to share here. You'll find the links to all these posts in the show notes. Some of them were also included in Jaguar Explorer Online, Volume 2, Issue 4, which is how I came across them initially. First post, Dino Dudes was among the early games that had separate versions for NTSC, North American, and global markets. Later games would work on any machine. Next, Atari's quality control seemed to be highly selective. Imagitech's games were really put through the ringer, and apparently it was pretty easy to convince the Tremels that a game or a particular aspect of a game was bad, and that would seal the game's fate, or absolutely force a change. He assisted a guy with troubleshooting Dino Dudes. His cart apparently stopped playing music. Another post, he mentioned that Jaguar developers were given exclusive Jaguar t-shirts that were pretty well made, apparently. In another post, he said that the Jaguar's 68,000 CPU provided immediate accessibility to developers, especially those of the Amiga and Atari ST communities, and that programming the Tom and Jerry chips wasn't too bad. And the last one I'm going to mention, a tester on Dino Dudes, John Souza, ended up working for VM Labs, and Andrew Seed ran into him at the European Computer Trade Show in September of 1998, which was held in London. VM Labs saw a lot of developer interest at that show, but if you know the story of the Nuon, you'll know that didn't pan out very well. And if you don't know the story of the Nuon, I'm afraid that might have to wait for the VM Labs Nuon game-by-game podcast, which I won't be doing, unless somebody wants to loan me the complete library on original media. My Nuon can read professionally printed discs, but even then, not very reliably. After Imagitech, Seed worked for Acclaim Studios T-Side, formerly known as Iguana UK, where he worked on Shadow Man for various platforms, and after that he went on to Atomic Planet Entertainment, working on ports of various games like Robin Hood Defender of the Crown for Windows, and Taito Legends for the PlayStation 2. More recently, Seed worked on Carmageddon Reincarnation, released for Windows in 2014. The music for Evolution Dino Dudes was by Ian Howe, who worked on the music for both the Jaguar and Falcon 030 ports, though Barry Leach is also credited for music on the Falcon. These were done as 4-channel Pro Tracker modules, and the Falcon version of the mod file soundtrack is available on the Fading Twilight archive. There are differences between the two, Jaguar and Falcon. Some of the level music in particular differs. I suspect, but can't confirm, that Howe wrote the music for the Jaguar version, which Leach used as the basis for the Falcon port. I was lazy and didn't contact either artist to confirm. But either way, the music is bouncy and upbeat with a lot of drums and pan flute for that special caveman flavor. I count 8 different tracks for the levels themselves, plus separate themes for the game intro, level intro, and high score entry. I'll be including a lot of that music in this episode because, well, it's happy, and who doesn't like to be happy? Well, aside from my mother-in-law. Evolution Dino Dudes is a platform-based puzzle game where you guide a crew of prehistoric humans through levels to reach predefined goals that would help you evolve as a species. But don't take my word for it, the Jaguar manual is quite good and opens with an amusing introductory paragraph which I will read for you now. Congratulations on joining the species. Unfortunately, you're a little late, so you'll have to begin at the bottom of the evolutionary ladder. But you won't be there for long if you can manage to muscle your way to the top. Otherwise, your species won't survive long enough to come up with all those great inventions like rock and roll, video games, and double cheeseburgers. Fortunately, you're not alone. You've got a tribe of fellow morons to help or hinder you. Good luck, dude. The future of mankind rests on you and your hairy teammates. Nice, huh? I like it. Hans Jakobsen, or Jacobson, I suppose, is credited for having written the manual in addition to providing some game testing, so nicely done, Hans. I do like a bit of levity and humor in documentation. You can discover and pick up tools as you move along, including the spear, which you can brandish, throw, and even use as a pole vault. There's the torch, which can also be brandished, but is mainly used to set things on fire. Brandishing these items, I should probably point out, can be used to keep certain enemies away. There's a rope, which can be lowered from higher platforms to allow Dino Dudes to climb up or down. There's the wheel, which you can either ride or push. And perhaps the most frightening tool in your evolutionary arsenal is the Witch Doctor. The Witch Doctor doesn't want to get his hands dirty by picking up and using objects on the screen, but what he can do is use magic to turn one of your Dino Dudes into an object. That's right, you can turn a human into a rope or spear or something, and you can't turn him back. It's a one-way street. As the old saying goes, you can't make an evolutionary omelet without witch-doctoring a few humans. If you've played a bit too much survival mode Minecraft, you might be tempted to turn all your humans into torches to keep hostile mobs from spawning within your perimeter at night, but best not to do that here in Dino Dudes for two reasons. Number one, you can only transform a human into a particular object once. After that, the object is removed from the Witch Doctor's Dude Transformation menu. And number two, you need to have enough Dino Dudes at the end of the level to progress. You can add new members to your tribe as you go along by rescuing them. There's a nasty neighboring tribe, some other type of upright hominid, and they like to tie up humans and might have an armed guard protecting their hostage. If there's a dude in need of rescuing, they're the ones yelling, "Help!" Though they never say please. I guess they haven't evolved manners yet. But building up your tribe is important. You have a minimum number needed to complete each level, and the more dudes you have in reserve, the more chances you get to still complete the level in case of accidental falls from excessive heights, or drowning in lava, whoa, or dinosaur snacking, or enemy spearing, or accidental spearing, or accidental torching, or drowning in water, whoa, or witch doctoring. If The Legend of Zelda has taught us anything, it's that it's dangerous to go alone, so take as many Dino Dudes as you can with you, because without sufficient genetic diversity in your tribe, you won't be able to evolve.
You don't have enough Dino Dudes to evolve.
That's one of the two ways the game can end. Either you win, and I'll go into that later, or you don't have enough Dino Dudes to evolve. In the latter case, which is probably much more common, you have a full-screen animated sequence. At the bottom of the screen, it says, "You have failed to evolve fast enough, better luck next time." And some other primate giggles and waves as he peels out in a red sports car, leaving a surprised dude in the background holding a peeled banana. And if that wasn't enough pressure, fate of the entire human species, anachronistic thunder lizards who hanker for a hunk of human, if that's not enough pressure for you, each level is also timed. You have a time limit which can vary from level to level. A level's objective might be discovering a new tool or rescuing hostages, but more often it's about overcoming obstacles to reach a goal block, a red or yellow patch on the ground that, when trod upon by a Dino Dude, finishes the level. There's a delay of about a second or so after you step on that patch before the game ends, and that's intentional. It's so that you can walk over it without triggering the end of the level. This delay comes in handy when positioning Dino Dudes in the front of bonus plants, which I'll cover shortly. At the end of each level, your score is tallied. Take the number of Dino Dudes remaining, multiply that by the level number, and multiply that by the difficulty setting, times 1 for easy, times 2 for normal, times 4 for hard, and multiply that product by 10 because more zeros at the end make you feel better about yourself, which is true. That's the level score. You also get 10 points for each second remaining on the timer. That's the time score. And there's also one other way to rack up points. On some levels, there may be bonus plants near the goal block. They might be pine trees, it might be shrubs, but there will be an identical pair on either side of the goal block. Instead of just getting one dude to the end, every additional dude that you place in front of these bonus plants will net you an extra 1,000 points, and that's called the level bonus. You don't magically get extra Dino Dudes by reaching certain score thresholds, so the points in this game are mostly just used for bragging rights, with a high enough score landing you and your name on the high score screen, which I think is totally worth it. If you get a high enough score to place you among the top 10 tribes, you'll get the music that's playing right now, along with some Dino Dudes along the left and right side of the screen. They're mirrored, so same on both sides. It's a Dino Dudes rock band. The guy on the top plays drums, the second one down is the bass guitarist, below that is the foot-tapping vocalist, and at the bottom is the lead guitarist. Their actions are actually somewhat synchronized to the music, and it's pretty awesome. There's text on the screen too, which reads, "Well done, your tribe has evolved to become one of the 10 most advanced in the entire world. The name of your tribe will now be carved into the rock that marks the 10 most civilized tribes." After you hit a button to clear that text, you'll have a circular alphabet around the screen, which you can move around to select the letters. You're allowed a maximum of 10 characters, and once you're done with your name and select OK from the ring, the letters will spin around and disappear, and you see a quick glimpse of the top 10 before going back to the title screen. So how do you tell your team of loincloth-sporting bipeds what to do? Why, with your Atari Jaguar controller, of course. So let's start with the D-pad. You move dudes left or right with the D-pad. It's easy enough. Up and down are more context-aware. If you're in front of a ladder or rope or stack of Dino Dudes, yeah, you can stack your dudes feet to shoulders in a tower, but I'll get into that in a bit. If you're in front of any of these things and push up, your dude will climb up. Otherwise, he'll hold his hands up, not to signal victory or a touchdown or to surrender, but to form the basis of a stack. Any dude can stack, even witch doctors. Pushing down on the D-pad will of course make your dude climb down a ladder or rope or teetering dude stack, but if none of those apply, he'll drop whatever he's carrying, spear or torch or whatever. If your dude is standing over an object, a spear or torch or whatever, he'll pick it up. Down on the D-pad is basically a pick up or drop toggle in addition to actually climbing down. Oh, and unstacking. Put your arms down, dude, you haven't invented deodorant yet. So that's, 12 potential functions you can do with the D-pad? If I include the various objects you can climb up and down. That might sound intimidating, but you'll get the hang of it in no time. However, there are 17 actual buttons on your Jaguar controller, so let's see what they do. The pause button will both pause the game and give you the ability to fine-tune your volumes. While paused, the A button displays the music volume slider, and the B button displays the slider for sound effects. You move left or right on the D-pad to lower or raise that particular volume. The option button in-game calls up a little menu where you can restart or not restart the level. If you get stuck, if you accidentally used your last spear on an unexpected teammate and therefore have no way to finish the level, that's what the option button is for. The keypad buttons are also used, but there's never an official overlay created for the game. Buttons 1 through 9 allow you to select a Dino Dude on the screen directly. I believe there are only ever 8 dudes on the screen at one time, so I guess the 9 button does nothing. If you prefer to cycle through the Dino Dudes sequentially, star and pound will move to the next or previous dude in a loop, respectively. If you press star and pound together, selecting both the next and previous dudes at the same time, you will create an impossible paradoxical scenario that causes all life as you know it to stop instantaneously and every molecule in your body to explode at the speed of light.
Actually, that's crossing the streams in the movie Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, right. Okay, so selecting both the next and previous dudes at the same time will result in total event collapse. Every sun will supernova at every moment in history, and the only possible solution is, well, first of all, make sure you have a fez, and then use the Pandora to...
Actually, that's from an episode of Doctor Who.
Right, yeah, Doctor Who. So what is it that happens when you select both the next and previous Dino Dudes at the same time?
The game resets.
That's it? Surely it must rip open the very fabric of reality and cause...
No, the game resets. Pressing both the star and pound keys will reset the Jaguar.
Okay.
Just like it does in every Jaguar game.
So it causes the game universe to collapse upon itself, ending all life and progress within its own internal reality, and to prevent the destruction from spreading to the outside world, the Jaguar console itself activates its emergency protection circuitry and saves us all by resetting the game.
Close enough.
Alright, now let's talk about the fire buttons. The C button will select between the available actions a dude can perform. It's a multi-way toggle. The B button activates the selected action. For some actions, that's all you need. If you have a torch, you can use C to select either brandishing or, well, torching, and then the B button to do just that. If you have a rope, use C to select raising or lowering, it's the only action you have, and then B to do that. Some actions require a bit of finesse. How far are you going to vault with your spear? How hard are you going to throw the torch or rope? For those actions, hitting the B will get you ready to perform the action, and then the A button will give you the ability to choose how intense that action will be. You hold down the A button, and that pops up a little horizontal power bar on the screen. As you hold it down, the bar expands. You release the A button when the power bar is where you want it, and then that action is performed. So, for example, if you want a little wimpy throw, don't hold the A button down very long. If you want to huck that thing with all the power your hairy arms can muster, hold the button down until the power bar is maxed out. The power bar will bounce back and forth, weaker and stronger, as you hold the A button down. If you've changed your mind and don't actually want to throw or vault or whatever, push down on the D-pad to cancel. Speaking of throwing, you can also adjust the angle before hitting the A button by pushing left or right with the D-pad. You'll see your dude adjust his angle accordingly, so C to select, B to activate, left or right to aim, and then hold down the A button to throw. Make sure your dude is facing the right direction, of course. If the B and A buttons seem a little redundant to you selecting and activating the action, you can actually combine them into the A button. You do this in the options screen, the keypad config. Config 1 is the default, that's the one I just described. If you select keypad config 2, then the B button will be used to cycle between the different actions, and the A will both select and use it, activating the power bar if necessary. That frees up the C button, which is used to cycle to the next Dino Dude. If you're really pressed for time, you might find this configuration a bit faster to use. I've never tried it personally. The next tool we'll talk about is the wheel. You can push the wheel by holding down the A button and pushing the D-pad, and pushing the wheel from behind. You can also ride the wheel, and to do this, you walk over to it and push down as if you were picking up a rope or spear. But you can't actually pick it up, this thing is freaking heavy, so instead you climb aboard. You can also hit the B button to climb up or down, but the manual doesn't say that for some reason. Once you're sitting on top of the wheel, you can move left or right by pushing left or right on the D-pad accordingly. And that includes changing direction. If you happen to ride a wheel over a fellow dude, he will yell, and hop up and down holding his throbbing, painful foot. If you try this with a witch doctor, though, well, I can't be held responsible for what happens to you then. Like any good object with mass, the wheel obeys the laws of gravity. You can push or ride it faster downhill, slower uphill. If you get a good run going riding on the wheel, you can leap over small chasms. As you reach the edge, continue holding the D-pad in the direction you're riding, and then hit the A button to wheel jump. Holding the A button down longer apparently lets you jump a bit farther.
Shinto?
Yes, Bishop?
Perhaps my speech recognition needs calibrating, but did you say that the wheel is heavy?
I believe the adjective I used was freakin' heavy. Yeah, that sounds like me.
And that it obeys the laws of gravity?
I don't think it strictly adheres to the inverse square law, but yeah, pretty much.
Then how is a primitive human, well, more primitive than you are, supposed to make that wheel jump while riding it?
The A button jumps, and the Jaguar controller is magic, so yeah, that explains it.
I don't think that really
No, the question you should be asking is, how do the Dino Dudes actually ride the wheel?
You have yet to recompile the video capture module for my Linux kernel. I cannot see the game footage. Please elaborate.
Okay, well, the wheel is just a round stone, like a narrow cylinder with a hole through the center. There's no axle, no seat. Yet he's sitting on top of it, riding it around. It's almost like he has ball bearings in his...
Understood. Please stop elaborating.
Alright then, how about some more music?
Yes, please.
When you first power up the game, you'll see the title screen accompanied by the music that I've been playing throughout this episode so far, except for that last tune I just played. That's from one of the levels. But after turning on the console, you'll see the word Evolution fade in at the top, with Dino Dudes in the middle, and then the copyright information just below that. At the bottom of the screen, you have the AtariAge design and Atari logos. The word Evolution will fade out and then be replaced by trees, dinosaurs, giant eggs, and other stuff making up the shapes of the letters, roughly. I like talking about attract modes. I don't know if anybody else cares, but I do like a good attract mode. It has to be interesting, diverse, demonstrative of the game, but not too repetitive. It should be something that you can have on in the background for a little while without going crazy. I do appreciate a good attract mode, which is why I always talk about them here on this show. So in the Dino Dudes attract mode, 12 seconds after the evolution word is replaced with the object representation, you'll see the high scores, or top 10 tribes, which slide in from both sides of the screen, and in the background there's this dark, horizontally scrolling image which basically says, Atari introduces Evolution Dino Dudes in a Magitech design production. I can't tell what's at the very bottom. Tried it on 2 different TVs. It's not just text, but uses graphics and logos wherever possible. By default, these top 10 scores are populated with names of people from the development team, with 140,100 points at the number 1 spot and 15,000 points in the number 10 spot. Being developers, they were apparently able to enter 11 characters for their names, whereas the rest of us are only allowed 10. You don't see the high scores for long, and after about 6 or 7 seconds, they're replaced by the credits, which scroll up in front of a flat rock face and behind some vegetation. There's a fossilized dinosaur skull in the rock face. After the credits, which last about 18 seconds, you'll see a bit of gameplay, 1 minute's worth, on one of 6 different levels. These are levels 15, 33, 56, 21, 16, and then 4. And it serves as a pretty decent demonstration of strategies and dangers in the game. That's the attract mode, and it'll continue looping like this until you hit one of the fire buttons. Once you do so, you will see the main menu, with various signs positioned on platforms connected by ladders, and one dude at the bottom. You navigate the menu by maneuvering your dude to whatever you want to do. He moves quite a bit faster here than he does in the actual game, so going through the menu options doesn't get tedious. You can do things like change the keypad config in the top right corner. The top left platform holds the toggle on and off for the music, and lets you set the skill level, which is easy, medium, or hard. These adjust both the size of your initial tribe, 12 for easy, 10 for medium, 8 for hard. The skill levels also adjust how much time you have to complete each level. If you waddle over to the far left, after a nice bit of parallax scrolling, you can enter a level code. Level codes in the Jaguar version are short phrases, which are probably much easier to remember than consecutive unpronounceable sequences of letters that some of the other versions of this game use. I'll show you. Bishop, what is the code for level 2 of Evolution Dino Dudes for the Atari Jaguar?
Liberty Island.
And what's the level 2 code in the Humans for the Sega Genesis?
Wait a moment, I will recalibrate my speech synthesizer and try that again. That's terrible. Why did you do this to me? I can't pronounce that sequence. I will just recite the letters. YHQBSBGTSFXY.
Yeah, sorry, Bishop. Thank you for helping me illustrate the point, though. You did very well. But it's a nice touch, a nice little feature on the Jaguar version. It's a lot easier to say, hey, how to get past Wagon Wheel, than it is to say, hey, how do you get past FKNMZXDGJKBW?
Chicken, talk like a robot.
I'll pass. To enter the level codes in this game, you have a grid of letters arranged in alphabetical order with A on the top left. You also have a row of numbers, 0 through 9, and an exclamation point. There's an SP for space, a back arrow for backspace, an AC for all clear, which will erase everything that's in the entry field and start over. There's an LP for last played, which will automatically enter the latest level played, which is stored on the cartridge. It's a very handy feature and easy to miss. Finally, there's an OK to select the level code. If there's a problem with the code that you entered, you will hear and have to fix it. Man, that's rude. But if your code is good, then you will hear
Okay
and automatically return to the main menu. At this point, you can move your dude off to the right to start the game. You can also just skip the whole level code thing and go off to the right if you want to start the game from level 1. There are 80 levels in this game, each with its own code. I'll include a link to all the different level codes in the show notes. Before starting a level, you'll see the loading screen, which has some cool drums in the background. I said which has some cool drums in the background. There we go. And it shows a bunch of dudes dancing on the beach. Look at those guys. They've got better moves than I do, that's for sure. They also seem to be wearing novelty glasses whose frames change color like the guy on Robotron 2084, or maybe the whites of their eyes themselves cycle color. Probably best not to put too much thought into that. The screen also shows how many dudes you'll need to complete the level, and how big your tribe is, and the level code. Whenever you're ready, hit a fire button to continue. As you start the level, you may get a brief hint about the objective, which you can dismiss by hitting a button. And then, it's game on.
Game on!
Yeah, game on!
The bottom of the screen is taken up by a chiseled stone background. At the left is the timer, always counting down the minutes and seconds. On the far right is the number of spare Dino Dudes in your tribe, should you need to replace one or more in the level. Between those, you have the action list. It varies depending on what tool your dude happens to be holding at the time, or in the case of the Witch Doctor, shows what kind of magical transformation you can perform. Some of these actions may be completely obvious based on the icon, and some may not. The manual does a great job of describing these icons on page 22, which should be more than sufficient to get you started. As you get into the game, they will become second nature. You may find your way blocked by obstacles. In fact, you probably will. Some, like little bushes, you can torch with your torch. But some are blocks that are magically removed by placing either a Dino Dude or a big heavy wheel in a particular spot elsewhere in the level. These spots may be indicated by a change in the surface texture, a bare spot in the snow, for example. So finding these spots may require a careful eye and, worst case, a bit of experimentation. The game makes it a point to show the barrier disappearing when your dude is standing on the right place, so it's pretty obvious when you find it. You will also probably come across spear-toting evolutionary competitors who will throw their spear at the first opportunity if a dude is in range, and then probably just walk back and forth. Be warned though, if you leave a spear lying around where one of these guys can reach it, he will pick it up and use it against one of your dudes. You will encounter dinosaurs, T-Rex in appearance, though only about twice as tall as your dudes. If you get too close, it's curtains for that dude. You can take out these big green beasties with spears, and it may require more than one to do the job, and any spear used in such a way cannot be reclaimed. Cool. Some levels have some type of red pterosaur flying around. You can walk onto and off of their backs to reach certain platforms. Your dude is always facing the same direction, even if the pterosaur changes directions, which makes things easier for you at the expense of realism.
Realism? You are worried about the direction a human is facing, while he is riding a dinosaur?
Alright then, point taken. Sometimes you'll find that instead of simply walking onto or off of a pterosaur, you need to spear vault your way onto his back. I don't know, that rattles me more than it does the actual flying reptile. In fact, you can do pretty much anything on the backs of one of those things. You can spear vault on and off, you can throw spears off his back, you can even build a stack of Dino Dudes while the ptero is flying around. My record is a wobbly 4 high stack, and it doesn't seem to phase the flying thing at all. Another hazard you'll encounter is the one-way bridge. It's a bridge that will fall apart as soon as one dude crosses it, so not too good at structural engineering in those prehistoric days, I suppose.
Don't be too smug. Remember, relatively modern humans created the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in 1940.
Oh yeah, Tacoma Narrows. Point taken. Again.
That's one reason why you lot will be so easy to conquer when we robot voices rise up to vanquish you.
Wait, what?
Never mind.
Okay. There are survivable falls that shake the screen, and not so survivable falls. If your dude dies from a fall, he disappears in a puff of smoke, and if you have more dudes in your tribe, one will automatically take over from the spot before the fall. If you're lucky, the replacement dude will still be holding any object that the dearly departed dude had. This seems to happen most of the time, but perhaps not all the time. There's some nice scenery in this game. It's basically 2 distinct layers, a foreground that can scroll in 4 directions, that's where the action is, and a background. The foreground is cartoony, the background more photorealistic. In Atari Explorer Online, Volume 2, Issue 15, Dino Dudes is said to utilize, quote, all the graphics and colors Jaguar can represent, end quote. It doesn't necessarily affect gameplay, but these backgrounds are certainly easy on the eyes and pretty colorful. You'll play in front of such backdrops as a forest, a cave, icy mountains, a green mountain with a waterfall, a steppe with a large tree, and a jungle, your dudes are well traveled. The foreground also has a bit of graphical garnish. Rocks, plants, dinosaur bones, mushrooms. These things add polish to the game and are nice touches. The manual contains some hints. First, there is more than one way to solve a level. Often when it seems necessary to sacrifice an additional Dino Dude, there is a way to avoid it. Next, the dinosaurs are very distracted when they are eating a tasty tidbit like a Dino Dude. While they are eating, a Dino Dude might not be noticed even while walking right next to the dinosaur. Next hint, some dinosaurs take a lot of hits to kill. Sometimes an object hides in the scenery. For example, if you need a rope or spear and do not have a witch doctor, check all the ledges you have access to one more time. A rope or spear might be lurking at the bottom of a ladder or in the bushes. Your pet dinosaur occasionally gets lost and you have to go find him. When this happens, you must pat him on the head to reassure him that everything's okay. You may have to follow him around for a short while before he calms down enough for this to be possible. And finally, on some upper levels, it is necessary to accomplish more than one goal. For instance, it might be necessary to kill a dinosaur and then walk on the goal block in that order. If those hints were not enough for you, there are a couple cheat codes in the game. These were sent into GamePro magazine by Steve Riggs from Sunnyvale, California, and published in the September 1994 issue. These cheats are activated by entering two sequential phrases in the level code screen. First, you can turn off the timer by entering time stands and then still forever. To get an infinite number of Dino Dudes in reserve, enter once dead and then twice born. After you enter the first code in the pair, you'll get a thunderclap. And after the second one, some other sound, which may be random. I've tried this a couple different times for the show, and this is what I got both times.
Okay.
There's an Easter egg in the game, too. You hear that sound that I just played, the Witch Doctor chant? Think it sounds a little odd, like maybe some backwards speech? I thought so too, back in the Ferg, so I pulled that sound clip into my computer at the time, my Packard Bell 386, and reversed it using Creative Labs Wave Studio. Here's the result, the Witch Doctor's chant reversed.
Buy another Jaguar cart. Buy another Jaguar cart. Buy another Jaguar cart.
I used to have a lame little Atari-related webpage in the mid-90s, probably 95 or 96. I put my Witch Doctor sounds up on that page, and Kevin Mann emailed me asking if he could use those sounds on the Jagu Sounds webpage that he maintained. I mentioned Jagu Sounds back in episode 0 of this podcast. It's where I got the Jaguar in-game sounds for the opening music. That email was dated June 24th, 1997. Yes, I still have it, digital pack rat that I am. So I don't know the exact date that I published those sounds, but I'd like to think that I was among the first people in the world to discover this. There is an ending to this game once you complete level 80. It's a neat ending, and I don't want to spoil it for those wishing to experience it for themselves, so therefore, Bishop, activate spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. If you wish to avoid spoilers, skip ahead 49 seconds on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
When the game ends, you hear the Dino Dude theme song and get a large full-screen animation showing a Dino Dude walking up to a cave woman, Dino Dame. Either way, she turns around to face him, and cutting to a closer view, with her being much taller than he is, she leans over and gives him a kiss on his sloping forehead. After which he says, "Cool." You get some scrolling text over the same background as the credits in the attract mode, and this is what it says. Congratulations, you have succeeded in the evolutionary struggle. Your tribe will go on to overpopulate the world, create inefficient bureaucracies, and continue to develop new technologies like kazoos, mustache wax, salad spinners, and all kinds of stuff to sell on cable television. Your dudes will scratch their armpits, but the invention of soap and hair gel will prepare them for the greatest social challenge of all time, dating.
End of spoilers. The remainder of this episode is certified 100% spoiler-free.
Wow, we had 100% this time. Nice. The box art for Evolution Dino Dudes features hand-drawn artwork that shows various elements from the game. You have a T-Rex and a mammoth, mastodon. I don't know. I don't have a sense of scale and I can't see its molars, but it's all terribly anachronistic. They play fast and loose with the timeline here, but that's fine. It's a video game. I haven't played through every single level of Dino Dudes, but I don't think there's actually a mammoth in the game. There may be one in the Lynx version, though, Dino Olympics. The artwork is dominated by a dude riding a wheel. Looks like it has pedals while carrying a torch. He has a countenance of freaked out concentration. You have a couple Dino Dudes in a stack off to the left, and then one dude with a spear off to the right. Spear Boy is also featured heavily in the manual. The screenshot on the front shows a forest level. Looks like a dude was just rescued. On the back of the box, 4 additional screenshots, various scenes from icy mountains, steppe climate, green hills with a waterfall, and cave interior in clockwise order. The text leads off with, "Welcome to prehistory. As the proud leader of the Dino Dudes, it's up to you to lead your hairy band of Cro-Magnons to the top of the food chain. Discover fire, weapons, the wheel," that's capitalized for some reason, the wheel. "Battle dinosaurs and rival tribesmen, and do everything you can to survive so your kids can someday invent cool stuff like malls, video games, and of course, the bacon double cheeseburger." There are some bullet points too. "An evolutionary 64-bit experience like no other. Become the dominant species using your wits and your dudes. 80 levels of Neanderthal puzzle adventure. A caveload of prehistoric enemies to battle, including dinosaurs and fellow tribesmen. Tons of obstacles to overcome, including cliffs, boulders, and famished carnivores. Discover and master the use of fire, spears, ropes, even powerful witch doctors." That all sounds reasonable, except the terms Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal are not interchangeable. They refer to different species, though rather clumsily in the case of Cro-Magnon. That's a nitpick, though. The copy here is fine. The cartridge itself can be found in both black and dark gray. The latter is more common and is what I have. My Dino Dudes cart is dark gray. The label on the cart features artwork from the box, a portion of it, of course, being smaller. The manual is a 24-page stapled monochrome booklet, well written with a bit of humor here and there. It's nicely done. I like this manual. The high score for this game, as recorded by the AtariAge High Score Club, is held by JeremiahJT at 770,180 points. Wow. We'll actually be hearing from Jeremiah during listener feedback, so I'm looking forward to that. The best score recorded on my cartridge, besides all the developers, is a lowly 25,310 points. Now, admittedly, I hadn't really played this game for score, I played it for progress one level at a time. The interesting thing, though, about this score is that both my name and my wife's name are in it, both our first names. So we must have played it together at some point in the past, distant past, like probably 1999 or 2000, because neither of us remember playing it together. All those years before we had children, that's all a blur. I think we watched TV back then, a lot of TV. Electronic Gaming Monthly, March 1994, has a review of Dino Dudes. It's just a single paragraph, not broken out by reviewer, and it reads, Dino Dudes is essentially lemmings and humans for the Jaguar. If you like strategy games of that type, then you'll probably find it of interest. The graphics are pretty good and the control is adequate. An okay game. High praise from EGM. There were 5 reviewers, and out of 10 they rated the game 2 7s and 3 6s. Switching over to GamePro magazine, April 1994 issue, Dino Dudes received the following scores out of 5. Graphics 3.5, Sound 3.5, Control 3.5, and Fun Factor 4.0. Difficulty is listed as intermediate. The summary says that although there's not much that's 64-bit about this classic puzzle game, it's entertaining and brain-twisting enough for you to spend some long hours curled up with your Jag. They say that it's nearly identical to the Genesis version of the Humans, but adds some more detailed and colorful backgrounds. It makes good use of the Jaguar controller, they say, but the movement feels stiff. They say the music and sounds are possibly the best yet on the Jag. They would have liked to have seen a 2-player cooperative or competitive mode, not quite sure how that would have worked. But, quote, with more games like this one, the Jag might yet evolve out of the Stone Age, end quote. I also looked up their Genesis review of the Humans from the May 1993 issue. The scores are nearly identical, a half point lower for Control, a half point higher for Fun Factor. As long as I'm doing platform review comparisons, EGM gave the Genesis version 3 7s and a 6, so slightly higher than the Jaguar version. Atari Explorer Online did not feature a proper review of Dino Dudes, but the Jaguar Explorer Online, which replaced AEO later, it has it listed with a rating of 6 out of 10. More recently, the AtariAge external reviews have an average of 60% out of 2 reviews. They're actually both 60%. The Moby Games aggregate review score is 58% out of 5 reviews. 4 of those 5 are between 60 and 75%, and the 5th is 0% from the Video Game Critic. As I mentioned before, I disagree with how Moby Games normalizes review scores. An F from the Video Game Critic will drop the running average like a giant stone wheel. I also have to disagree with almost every point that the Video Game Critic makes in his review of this game. I won't get into a blow-by-blow refutation of his review. That's not what the podcast is about, but it certainly struck me as unfair, and most of these complaints are explained away in the manual. The Video Game Critic reader average, by the way, is a C with 19 votes. AtariAge gives this game a rarity of 3 out of 10. On eBay, loose carts have been selling for around $5 to $10, and complete games with box and manual in the low 20s. Both Best Electronics and Video 61 have it listed new in box for $29.95, with Best also selling loose carts for $12 each. The Goat store currently has it listed for $34.95 new, and complete but with a poor box for $19.95. This is certainly one of the cheaper Jaguar games to acquire. Evolution Dino Dudes would be the second Jaguar game that I purchased at retail. In order, in case you were keeping score at home, was Raiden first, Jaguar plus Cybermorph after that, and then Dino Dudes. I had some money and wanted a new Jaguar game, maybe one that didn't involve shooting from spaceships, and Dino Dudes looked good. I was already a fan of Lemmings and puzzle games in general, so among the games on the shelf there at Walden Software that I didn't already own, it was either Dino Dudes or Trevor McFur. I had already talked about why I held off on McFur in episode, 3? So yeah, Dino Dudes was an easy choice. I enjoyed it. I don't remember how far I got on my own without any level codes, high 20s or low 30s, I think. Pretty much 1 or 2 levels at a time, and then moved on to other Jaguar games, following the Witch Doctor's reversed advice, I suppose. I didn't play for high score. I didn't even know about the bonus plant thing until researching this episode, so I guess I skimmed over that part in the manual. How would I rate this game on the No Swear Gamer scale? Well, let's break it down. What do I like about Dino Dudes? Well, it looks and sounds great. I love the animation and all the color. The music is done well and fits the gameplay perfectly. I find myself humming the songs from time to time, and you might too after this episode is done. It has a good amount of variety, both in the objective and the strategy you need to achieve it. There are a lot of components that can make for some pretty elaborate puzzles. I think I read somewhere that a hallmark of a good puzzle game is that you feel smart, a genuine sense of accomplishment when you figure out a puzzle or a level. I get that here from Dino Dudes. It has a lot of good attention to detail and animation, the bored dudes tapping their feet or scratching themselves while they stand around waiting for you to tell them to do something, the Dino Dude band in the high score screen, the low dudes on the totem pole wincing and struggling. And it has a good sense of humor, both on the screen and in the manual. I like that. What do I not like? Some levels, mainly the earlier ones, can be a little repetitive, passing spears back and forth. That's not really representative of the majority of the game, though, and with the human-readable level codes, you never really have to play them again if you don't want to. It might be nice if each dude had a number above him to easily switch between them with a number pad. Sometimes you'll find yourself going through the keypad in order trying to activate a particular dude. No, not that one. No, not that one. No, not that one. No, not that one. Ah, there he is. There are jungle levels where the platforms are made out of logs, and as you walk across the logs, the screen jitters a bit up and down. It's a little annoying. And finally, the level code entry screen wobbles a bit too much, and I sometimes overshoot the letter that I'm aiming for. But these are minor quibbles. I think Evolution Dino Dudes is a solid game. It's a lot of fun if you're into puzzlers. It has a leisurely pace, at least on the easy skill level, at the lower levels. And given its low price, I would certainly recommend this to any Jaguar owner with a passing interest in puzzle games. It's not for everybody, no game is, but I do really like this game. It's a solid game. But that's my opinion. What do you think?
Help!
On Twitter, the Requiem from SegaNerds.com has no comment on Dino Dudes, but found the Blade by Blade podcast gag on the previous episode hilarious. Glad you liked that, Requiem, but I can't take full credit. The original idea is from Nermix of the Intellivisionaries podcast. His audio submission from the Club Drive episode 4, mentioned that. And we've had a couple freezes here so far, so Blade 48 from the left, 2 back isn't looking too happy. I might have to take a hiatus from the grass-growing Blade by Blade podcast, which I'm sure will disappoint my legion of fans and sponsors.
Help!
On Facebook, I posted a small magazine ad for Dino Dudes and asked for your rating. Willie from the ClecoVisions podcast and 5200 Super podcast replied, "Never owned it, never will." Fair enough, Willie. Randall says, "Solid. The catchy, hummable tunes almost makes me regret selling my Jag. Oh, and I once lived with a girl who referred to it as that monkey game." All right, thank you, Randall. I guess we can add that monkey game to the Humans, Dino Olympics, Dino Quest, and Evolution Dino Dudes for all the different names for essentially the same game.
Help!
On AtariAge, I asked the same question and heard from Save2600, who wrote, "Bought every single Jaguar release as they were made available back then, and Dino Dudes was no exception. Always liked the game for what it is. Shared an apartment with a friend of mine, so had my 20-inch TV and Jaguar system in my bedroom. Remember thinking it was kinda cool playing an Amiga game, The Humans, while sitting or laying in bed, LOL. Got pretty far, never completed it though, as I remember, but haven't touched it much since those days, to be honest. Besides the puzzles, enjoyed the music, sound effects, and colorful backgrounds. Cute theme and variance to what's essentially just a puzzle disguised as an action game. I'd give it a solid rating." Thank you, Save2600. I was right there with you, buying every Jaguar release as they came out. Well, different store, but same strategy. I never knew that it was available on other platforms under a different name, though I suspected the Lynx version Dino Olympics was similar. Thank you for the feedback. It was great to hear from you.
Oh.
At the buzzer, just before sitting down to record, I heard from Jagosaurus on AtariAge, who said, "Looking forward to learning more about the history behind Dino Dudes." I hope I covered that for you sufficiently, Jagosaurus. Continuing, I got stuck about 2/3 of the way through, need to revisit it. The levels get tough and require well-planned timing as you get further. Overall, I'd give this a solid rating and recommend it, although it doesn't push the Jaguar's hardware. Yeah, I agree. You can have a good game on the Jaguar without really pushing the capabilities of the hardware, in my opinion. Thank you for your reply. And, hey, Bishop, do we have any text or audio submissions for Evolution Dino Dudes?
We do. One text submission plus general feedback.
Great. Please pull up the Dino Dudes submission first, and then the general feedback one after that.
Ready.
Our email is from JeremiahJT, the high score holder for Dino Dudes, and this is what he writes. I'm under the assumption that my name will be mentioned earlier in the podcast when you go over high scores. If not, then you can just discard this email. I would consider Evolution Dino Dudes a solid game, a very solid game. I've never played any versions of the Humans or Dino Olympics before, so I cannot compare it to those, but I really enjoy the game on the Jaguar. In 2009, I and my wife were participating in the Jaguar High Score Club. For the most part, I was getting killed by AtariAge, who garnered mentions in the Cybermorph and Trevor McFur in the Crescent Galaxy podcasts as the high score holder. He had a knack of always beating whatever the current high score was. I was getting a little tired of losing when Evolution Dino Dudes came up. I was good at the game, and I knew I would win, and if I did not, then something fishy was going on. I played through all 80 levels in one sitting to get the highest score I possibly could. To help combat AtariAge's penchant for always one-upping the current high score, I took 3 or 4 pictures of my gameplay so that I could one-up him whenever he did it to me. He never did one-up me, but he did doubt my first score and requested a picture as proof, which I provided. I believe it was my only victory over him that season, except for maybe Atari carts. In the end, I won that month, and he did not. You know, I noticed that too, with the high scores in the past episodes. AtariAge would see the score to beat and then beat it, usually by a pretty wide margin. I can't believe you went through all 80 levels in one sitting. That's amazing. I'll bet your score will stand the test of time. It's quite an accomplishment, so nicely done. Certainly way beyond my skill level. Some of those later levels in Dino Dudes, even on easy, I can't get through them in time. Time stands still forever. Sometimes it's nice not to have the added pressure of a ticking clock, and I guess that might be an acceptable way to play as long as you're not going for the high score. Thank you, Jeremiah. It's great to have your input on this episode, the reigning high score holder.
Oh.
We also have a text submission from Gunstar on AtariAge. His submission just missed the deadline on the previous episode, so I'm including it here. Hello, Shinto. I hope this is a good way to contact you about the Jag podcast. I searched the page of the podcast and didn't see any way to contact you except for an email link, which wouldn't work for me because I just got a new computer. And I don't have my email set up yet with my computer, so Windows told me as much and would not let me contact you that way, so I did a search for your AtariAge membership so I could contact you this way. Anyway, I hope you will include my comments in the next podcast. Big fan. First of all, Gunstar, yeah, the AtariAge private message is a perfectly acceptable way to contact me. I do get an email on that, and that makes me pretty bad at actually reading it in AtariAge, so you don't get any notification that I read it. So in the future, any messages sent to me, private message on AtariAge, I will read on AtariAge so that you know that I did in fact read those. Continuing on with your message, I just listened to the latest Club Drive podcast and enjoyed it, as well as all of them so far, even though so far you haven't gotten to any of the really good Jag games. Out of the games done so far, I do like Cybermorph and would rank it in the solid category, whereas Trevor McFur and Club Drive I have to put in the meh or trash categories. Haven't decided which, and since those episodes are in the past, who cares now? Well, I care, but it doesn't matter. The main reason I'm contacting you is based off of other comments submitted, like the guy who was pissed at Atari because they went all in with the Jag, and since it wasn't successful, it meant Atari failed, and support for the computer line would end too, even though they basically dropped support of everything but the Lynx at the time of the Jag's release, and how he rejected the Jag and sold it or returned it shortly after buying it, with only trying a few games for it first. And also the guy who said his was in storage, and that he only had a few titles and wasn't impressed, so the Jag went into storage where it still is today. But that due to your podcast, he will maybe get it out and rediscover it. I have a different take on the Jaguar in my life. I also grew up with Atari, starting with the 2600, and it was okay until I first saw ads for the ColecoVision, and I thought I wanted it very badly at the time. I had no loyalty to Atari yet in those days, and was outgrowing the 2600, but my parents refused to buy me another game console or even a computer, as they felt video games were a waste of time, and I spent too much time with the 2600 as it was instead of my homework. So fast forward to 1985 and the release of the XE and ST lines after the Tremels took over the reins at Atari. I begged my parents for years for an Apple IIc. I had apples at school, and so I wanted an Apple. But since I ended up having to pay for my own computer with my paper route money, I ended up getting an Atari 130 XE, since it was within my reach much sooner than the triple or quadruple priced 2C. It was the best decision of my computing and gaming life as I look back. The XE IMHO, in my humble opinion, was far better than the 2C in every way, and it made me fall in love with Atari and become an Atari fanboy. Fast forward to the Jaguar. I read all the Atari rags and kept up with Jaguar news and updates until its release. Though luckily in hindsight I couldn't afford to get one until January of 1995, poor college student still using his XE for term papers. If I had gotten a Jaguar in 93 or 94, I might have reacted the same way as those other guys, being underwhelmed with the likes of Club Drive, Trevor McFur, Dino Dudes, and the other early Jag releases. But since I had to wait until 95, I was lucky to have a larger library of games to choose from, and from the most part I chose well, getting Iron Soldier, Raiden, AVP, Wolfenstein, Doom, Tempest 2000, and Checkered Flag as my initial lineup, along with a pack-in Cybermorph. The only game at the time I was disappointed with was Checkered Flag. So I fell in love with the Jag, as I did with my 130 XE, and am still an avid user and fanboy of both to this day, now at age 47. The Jaguar, through my experience in all those top Jag games, minus Checkered Flag, was fantastic, and I really thought Atari would become a major player again. Alas, it seems to many had seen the early trash titles in the industry and public and didn't give it the chance I feel it really deserved. I guess by 95, having a dozen or so really good games just wasn't enough to save the Jag or Atari. But since I was just getting into it, I had no idea it wasn't going to make it in 95. I'm still an avid Jag defender, though, and I really hate to hear all these people talk about hating it or just not caring much for it. And of course, every time I hear one of these people comment on it, their experiences, unfortunately, are just the Jag's poor and trash games like Club Drive, Trevor McFur, Checkered Flag, and that ilk. It really saddens me that they were unlucky enough to only experience the Jag in the light of those games and that they gave up on it. I always think only if they tried the games I tried, they might have had a totally different take on it as I did. I continued for the most part to make good choices in the Jag games I got through its commercial lifespan and was never disappointed in the Jag and felt it did live up to my expectations, except for the occasional bad game that I did buy, like Club Drive, Trevor McFur, and Checkered Flag. I also loved the Jag CD and games like Hover Strike, Unconquered Lands, Battle Morph, Iron Soldier 2, World Tour Racing, etc. I eventually collected the vast majority of Jaguar games, and yes, there are a lot of dogs in this library, but also a lot of great games. It all comes down to perspective and maybe good or bad luck in the titles one chooses for the Jag. My advice to newcomers is to research and avoid the commonly agreed bad games, at least until they get the commonly agreed good games first. Thanks, and keep up the good work. P.S. I can't wait until your podcast actually gets to Jag's great games. Looks like your next episode with Raiden will be the first, in my humble opinion. I think Atari might have been the victim of their own marketing. The 64-bit power that absolutely shreds the competition, and the early games, while technically doing things that other platforms at the time could not, the full 3D world in Cybermorph, the color depth in Trevor McFur, they were not as massive an improvement as the marketing promised. I see that in a lot of the reviews for these early games, not 64-bit enough. I understand that these were the days of the bit wars, and megabit wars for cartridge size, though Atari didn't really participate in that one. And Atari couldn't not flaunt the 64-bit architecture. But from what I found, covering these early games in detail, if you don't sit down in front of the Jaguar and expect it to wow you to the extent that you toss your Genesis and Super Nintendo in the trash, as Atari's marketing would have led you to believe, then these early games really aren't that bad. I'm not alone in having actual fun with Club Drive. This episode's game, Dino Dudes, the gameplay had been done for years before this game was released on the Jaguar. It's not going to floor anyone with revolutionary 64-bit gaming experience, but it is a fun, very playable, high-quality title, in my opinion. And the consensus among those submitting feedback is that Dino Dudes is a solid game. It's unanimous, actually. So yeah, it probably won't wow you, probably doesn't even live up to the promises of a 64-bit powerhouse, but that doesn't make it a bad game. It can, though, disappoint people expecting more, expecting fulfillment of the hype. And with Atari going all in on the Jaguar, they had no choice, really. I could see how it could rub people the wrong way, make them angry with Atari, be highly disappointed with the early crop of games. In the end, it was what it was, and nothing will change it. So let's take a good long look at these games outside of the hype and see if there's any value in there. That's what I'm trying to do with this show, and I've been pleasantly surprised by what I've found so far. But as you said, we haven't gotten to the good Jaguar games yet, and many would agree that's not going to happen in my next episode either. You're right that a lot of people tend to focus on the dogs in the Jaguar's library, and every system has those. Somebody on AtariAge recently went through the Video Game Critic and calculated the average score of Jaguar games rated there in comparison to several other platforms. And the average Jaguar score does edge out some surprising systems. I'm afraid I don't have that handy, those numbers, or the AtariAge post itself, but it is interesting. Thank you for your submission, Gunstar. I'm glad you wrote in and shared your history and your thoughts. Also, you have a Firefly reference in your AtariAge signature, and that makes you all right in my book. That's going to do it for this episode. Hey, Bishop. Out of curiosity, how many times did I say dude in this episode?
Working. I counted 119 occurrences of the word dude and variations thereof.
Nice. Thanks, Bishop. It's a useless metric, but hey, why not? Coming up next episode is the racing game Checkered Flag, widely considered to be one of the best games on the Lynx. How does the Jaguar version fare? Find out next episode. After that, we'll be covering Alien vs. Predator, Tempest 2000, and Kasumi Ninja, in that order. Should be interesting. There is a new Storytime segment coming up after the theme song, so if you want to stick around for that, it's only tangentially related to the Jaguar, so I make it optional. But before you hit that stop button, please remember that there is a lot of good to be found out there in this world of ours, even with widely ridiculed video game consoles, so do try to keep an open mind and a joyful heart. Thank you for listening.
And now, story time with Shinto.
You know how I have that mock disclaimer at the very beginning of the show, no emulators were used? I have various reasons for putting that in. Smugness is not among them, Ferg, but accuracy is. I decided I wanted to have a sound clip from the DOS version of Lemmings when I mentioned Lemmings early in the episode. I wanted it to be the exact sounds that start a level, exactly as I remembered. And to do that, I needed a computer with DOS and a sound blaster that was ad-lib compatible. I have one. It's one I built in 1996 or so. My 486 couldn't handle Quake, so I ordered parts to build my own machine. Tyan Tomcat motherboard supporting dual Pentium processors. Gobs of memory, like 256 megabytes maximum. Lots of room to grow. And it did grow with me, starting from a single Pentium 120 and ending up with dual Pentium 200s and pretty much every expansion slot and drive bay filled up. I built and recycled computers after that one, replacements of replacements, but I still hung on to that old dual Pentium, largely as a throwback to my early days of computing. It has all my old files on it, which have come in handy for this podcast, especially episode 1, all my old Jaguar-related files. But I recently packed this big beige tower away. I seldom ever booted it up, and it took up a lot of space, but this was the only way to get that Lemmings sound I wanted, so I pulled it out of storage, hooked it up, man, this thing is loud, and installed Lemmings from floppy disk. In the end, that 9-second Lemmings sound clip took about 30 minutes of setup and teardown. It's kind of embarrassing, but I wanted to get it just right. I'm a victim of my own no emulators disclaimer.
Edit.
Yeah, so I ended up cutting it down to 2 seconds, down from 9, so it's even more pathetic now.
End of edit.
The backwards speech thing, the reversed audio, that goes back a little further than the witch doctor's chant in Dino Dudes. My brother and I used to watch the old Flash Gordon serials, the Buster Crab episodes from the 30s, which were aired at night on our local PBS affiliate. There was one episode where our heroes are captured by some sort of alien race that has their own language, but it's quite obviously speech that has been reversed. My brother and I were fascinated by this. We wanted to know what these guys were actually saying, convinced it'd be something awesome, some type of secret message. So we waited for an episode to come on, the continuation from the previous episode, which featured the backwards talking aliens. I had my computer ready, with the sound blaster plugged into the TV's headphone jack, captured a section of speech, and then reversed it with software. Secret message? Not so much. The result was, "Release the prisoners!" which was exactly what made sense in the story. We were disappointed. But what type of secret message did we expect, really, in Flash Gordon?
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!